Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world that smells faintly of beeswax, boiled cabbage, and wet stone. You're in rough wool robes, your head's been shaved into a half-bald moon, and from this moment forward, your life belongs to a monastery. That's right, tonight, you're going full medieval monk. Before you settle in, take a second to like and subscribe, only if you truly enjoy the content I'm sharing with you. And if you're listening right now from somewhere weird, like a tent in Alaska or a bathtub in Bangkok, post your location and local time in the comments. Go ahead and lower the lights, maybe switch on a fan for that gentle background hum, and let's slowly drift into tonight's journey together. You stand at the gate of the abbey, a heavy wooden arch carved with Latin words you can't quite pronounce. You've walked for days to get here, mud-caked boots, trembling legs, maybe one biscuit left in your bag. But that's it. You've left the world behind, your family, your village, your dreams of becoming the next great falconer. Now it's all prayer, silence, and a whole lot of rules. A bell tolls. Not ominously, just purposefully. Welcome to your new home. An older monk greets you without a smile. His robe is patched, and his eyes look like they've stared at too many stained glass windows and not enough sunsets. He gestures silently for you to follow. You pass under the cloister arch, and it hits you. The sound changes. Outside, the wind howled and birds chirped. In here, it's just your own breath and the crunch of gravel. Everything muffled. Like the world is holding its breath. First stop, the chapter house. A long, cold chamber with stone benches and 0 cushions. Here's where you kneel while a line of silent monks stare directly through you. You think they're praying, but it also feels like they're judging your haircut. This is your initiation. A ritual centuries old. You don't just sign a contract, you surrender your body, your time, even your name. Yes, they might rename you. You came in as Thomas. You're leaving this room as Brother Giles. Or Brother Oswin. Or if the abbots got a sense of humor, Brother Egbert. You recite vows you barely understand. Poverty, chastity, obedience, and you sign up for a lifetime of, well, nothing. No possessions, no marriage, no opinions, just God. Lots and lots of God. And let's not forget, historians still argue whether new monks truly understood what they were giving up, especially the younger ones, some of whom were barely 12 and had been offered by their parents for spiritual safekeeping. Or maybe for tax breaks. Depends on how holy the year was. Next comes the literal crossing over. You're escorted to the dormitory, where you'll now sleep shoulder to shoulder with 30 other snoring men who all think flatulence is a moral test. The bedding is straw-stuffed linen, and there's no such thing as a pillow. You lie down, and the ceiling stares back at you with spider webs and the quiet weight of eternity. But you're not a full monk yet. Oh no. First, a trial period. Think of it like monk probation. You're called a novice, and you're watched closely to see if you can handle the lifestyle. The chores, the silence, the constant itchy wool, the chanting, the cold. Did we mention the cold? Medieval monasteries were not known for their central heating. It's not all gloom. There's something soothing about the rhythm of it all. You rise with the sun. You eat when the bell rings. You clean floors that never get clean, and you listen to scripture that was written centuries before your grandfather was born. And slowly, your thoughts begin to quiet. Maybe it's the prayer. Maybe it's the lack of choice. Maybe it's just the bread. Lots and lots of bread. In the middle of the night, you wake up, not from dreams, but from another bell. It's time for matins. The first of 7 daily prayer sessions. You shuffle in silence to the chapel, eyes blurry, and listen to the droning Latin chants that echo off the vaulted stone ceiling like sleepy bees humming scripture. At first, you think, this is impossible. I'll never survive this. And then, somehow, you do. One day passes. Then, another. And before long, you can't remember the last time you made a choice for yourself. It's not scary. It's peaceful, in a slightly eerie way. But make no mistake, you are watched. You are judged. And if you mess up, even accidentally snoring during prayers, you're in for public penance. We'll get to that later. Spoiler, it involves peas. For now, you lie back in your lumpy bed and try not to think too hard. Try not to remember the taste of roasted meat, or the warmth of a fire, or the way the stars looked from your family's hilltop field. You're a monk now. And your bizarre journey is only just beginning. They take the scissors to your head with alarming enthusiasm. No gentle trimming here, just swift, deliberate snips that strip away the last strands of your old identity. Your tonsure is now official, a bald circle on the crown of your head, like a holy bullseye inviting divine wisdom, or the next draft of winter's chill to settle in. You feel the cold air on your freshly exposed scalp and realize, vanity just died a quiet, monastic death. Then come the robes. Coarse wool, naturally. Dyed the color of weathered stone, they itch in places you didn't know could itch. There's a rope belt that cinches you just tightly enough to remind you this isn't about comfort. You're swaddled like a potato in scratchy sackcloth, and the vibe is humble servant of God meets medieval scarecrow. This is your uniform now. Not just a costume, but a constant reminder that you're no longer part of the world outside the cloister walls. You've chosen poverty, or more accurately, poverty has chosen you. You're now the embodiment of simplicity. No pockets, no buttons, no flair. Just a walking, chanting embodiment of restraint. And now, we come to your feet. Cold. Always cold. The monastery floors are stone, and stone doesn't care how devout you are. Your thin leather sandals provide about as much insulation as a slice of cheese. Socks. If you're lucky, maybe a linen wrap. But don't count on it. Historians still debate whether monks were allowed to wear them at all. Some say only in deep winter, others insist they were a sinful luxury. Your toes are basically medieval popsicles either way. You shuffle to your new home, the cloister courtyard, where you're expected to walk, think, pray, and maybe develop an existential crisis or two. The silence is dense, like snow. You want to ask a question, but you remember the rule: don't speak unless it's necessary. Is it necessary to ask where the bathroom is? Probably not. You figure you'll discover it the hard way. As you explore the abbey grounds, every corner seems designed to make you feel small. The ceilings loom, the walls whisper with echoes, and even the doorways are framed like archways to another realm. You're not just in a building, you're inside a living, breathing monument to God. One that smells vaguely of damp limestone and cabbage stew. Your days now revolve around routine, but the early weeks are an avalanche of confusion. Which prayer comes after lauds? Are you allowed to sneeze during Vespers? Why does Brother Martin keep staring at the crucifix like it owes him money? You receive a handwritten guide. It's less helpful than you'd hope. Written in medieval Latin and decorated with squiggly marginalia, tiny doodles of monsters, saints, and one suspiciously detailed snail jousting a knight. It's part instruction manual, part fever dream. Mealtimes offer little comfort. You sit in silence, hunched over a wooden bowl of lukewarm legumes. One monk stands at a lectern reading scripture aloud while the rest of you chew slowly, reverently, and with minimal enthusiasm. Food is functional. You eat to live. Pleasure is not on the menu. Though technically speaking, you are allowed a small amount of beer with dinner. Yes, beer. Monastic life without caffeine or warmth would be too much even for medieval standards. It's weak and a bit sour, but it's better than the water, which might contain a few microguests of the microbial persuasion. One of the stranger adjustments is the lack of mirrors. Not because they're forbidden, but because, well, no one sees the point. Why check your reflection when you're meant to forget the body entirely? You start to forget your face. You catch glimpses in puddles, maybe, or the polished brass of a candle holder. But mostly, your appearance dissolves from your sense of self. You're not you anymore. You're just Brother Giles, or Brother Egbert, or the one who fell asleep in the Psalms again. Some days, you find a rhythm. You light candles with purpose. You sing the antiphons without stumbling. You scrub the cloister steps until they shine with modest pride. And for a brief moment, the world feels quiet in a good way, not empty, but calm. Then, out of nowhere, you sneeze during Mass and drop your hymnal. The sound echoes like a thunderclap. Every head turns. You brace yourself for judgment. But instead of wrath, you see a few knowing smirks. One monk even winks. Maybe, just maybe, they remember what it was like to be new. And let's not forget, while monastic life looks uniform from the outside, there's a whole hierarchy under the hood. The abbot is the boss, of course, equal parts father figure, administrator, and semi-divine authority. Below him, there are priors, cellarers, sacristans, and the ever-important infirmarian, who may or may not believe in leeches. You'll meet them all in time, and probably disappoint at least half of them. For now, you survive. You learn. You whisper prayers at dawn and walk in circles at dusk. You sweep floors with a broom older than your mother, and you mutter psalms until they become your dreams. You look down at your rough robe, feel the breeze on your tonsured scalp, and wonder, not for the first time, what on earth have I signed up for? The bell wakes you like a slap from a wet sandal. It's 2 a.m. Not metaphorically. Not feels like 2 a.m. It is, in fact, 2 o'clock in the freezing, godforsaken morning, and you are expected to rise, dress, and trudge through the cloister in near silence to chant praise unto the Lord with a voice that still hasn't cleared the cobwebs of sleep. Welcome to Matins, the first and perhaps cruelest of the 7 canonical hours. You swing your legs off the straw mattress. A puff of cold air rushes up your robe like it's trying to reach your soul. The dormitory is lit only by moonlight sneaking through narrow stained glass slits. You hear the soft creaks of 30 other groggy monks doing the same slow-motion misery shuffle. One sneezes. A cardinal sin, but understandable. Slipping on your sandals, crusty from yesterday's frost, you join the zombie parade toward the chapel. The floor's cold. The air's colder. And the silence is almost aggressive. No one speaks. No one groans. You're not even sure if anyone blinks. Matins is long. Like, really long. Up to 2 hours of singing psalms, reciting scripture, and mumbling prayers in Latin that you sort of know by now, but still mess up when your brain fogs over mid-verse. You stand. You kneel. You bow. You stand again. It's choreographed exhaustion. The chant begins. You open your mouth, and what comes out is not exactly angelic. Your voice cracks. Your pitch is off. But here's the thing, no one cares. Chanting isn't about performance. It's about rhythm. Flow. A sonic tide pulling you under and carrying you somewhere quieter than thought. It lulls you into a strange peace. Or it would, if your knees weren't starting to throb. One foot starts to fall asleep. Your stomach growls. Your eyes scan the candles, dripping wax like tiny hourglasses, and you start wondering exactly how many verses are left in Psalm 119. Spoiler, too many. The monks around you don't seem tired. Or maybe they've just given up on resisting the fatigue. Some are decades deep into this schedule. Their faces are unreadable in the flickering light. They sway gently, like reeds in a spiritual wind. You try to mimic them, but your back spasms halfway through a bow. Historians still argue whether monks experienced a kind of meditative transcendence during matins, you remember reading once. Or if they just got really, really good at sleepwalking. Right now, you're leaning heavily toward the latter. You finally shuffle back to the dormitory, half hallucinating. You've aged approximately 7 years since waking. You have another hour or two to sleep before Lauds begins. That's the next round of prayers. Yes, they wake you twice before sunrise. You do the spiritual equivalent of napping between fire drills. You collapse onto your bed. Your limbs feel like cold dough. Your brain is fogged. But somewhere inside all that groaning fatigue is a flicker of something else. A weird, subtle pride. You did it. You rose at 2 a.m. and sang to the darkness. You moved your lips with intention. You joined a line of brothers stretching back centuries, doing the same odd ritual in the same echoing stone halls. This isn't just devotion. It's survival. Back up again. The second bell rings like déjà vu lauds. You know the drill by now. Robes on. Sandals tightened. Don't yawn in front of the abbot unless you want to scrub lavatory floors with a nail brush. The chapel again. This time, a little brighter. The eastern sky is softening. There's something holy about it, watching the faintest blush of dawn through stained glass as you murmur praise with a group of equally exhausted brothers. You're chanting before the world wakes up, before birds even start their morning drama. It's during these early hours you start to notice the strange rhythm of monastic life sinking into your bones. It's not like normal tired. It's structured tired. Predictable. Repetitive. It wears you down, but also sands off the edges of your restlessness. There's a theory that this schedule was deliberately punishing, to discipline the body and humble the soul. Some say it was meant to keep temptation at bay by replacing all opportunities for sin with exhaustion. Others argue it was just spiritual logic. If you love God, you show up early. Like, very early. But right now, you just love the moment when lauds ends, and the sun has risen enough to make everything feel real again. A bird chirps. One of the junior monks sneezes again. You're not alone in this sleep-deprived holiness. By breakfast, if you can call a slice of rye and a cup of thin ale breakfast, you're awake enough to shuffle into the day's routine. You're hungry, yes, but more than that, you're weirdly serene. Like something clicked. You've been up for hours. You've chanted yourself half into a trance. And somehow, it makes sense. Maybe not normal sense, but monastic sense. You sit in silence as the reader at the table recites scripture again. You nibble. You nod. You try not to fall face-first into your plate. One monk beside you has actually fallen asleep upright. No one says a word. The brother opposite him gently nudges the table, causing a slow, graceful wake-up that looks like nothing ever happened. And you sip your weak ale, wipe your fingers on the hem of your robe, and prepare to face the rest of your peculiar, bell-rung day. Because in just a few hours, that next bell's coming. And your strange new life, of chanting, praying, and probably falling asleep mid-psalm, marches on. You don't have a job anymore, not in the usual sense. No more bosses yelling across parchment-strewn desks, no more carts to push or fields to hoe for a lord who never learns your name. But don't get too cozy. Monastic life isn't about leisure. It's about laborar est orer, to work is to pray. And your new job? You've been assigned to the scriptorium. Yes, the scriptorium. A place that sounds vaguely magical and turns out to be a medieval copy shop with scoliosis. You're led through a low stone archway and into a long, dim room that smells like ink, parchment, and concentrated eye strain. Wooden desks are lined up like confession booths, each with a little window, a sloped writing surface, and a truly unfortunate stool. There's no cushion. Of course there's no cushion. Sit here, your supervisor says, a monk with ink stains on every known surface of his robes, and a small quill feather stuck in his tonsure. You sit. The stool creaks in protest. Your task: copy holy texts. Line by line. Word by word. Letter by meticulously perfect letter. The script you're copying is not modern. It's Carolingian minuscule, or maybe Gothic textura quadrata if your monastery is feeling fancy. You stare at the page. It stares back. It's less like writing and more like weaving, every letter its own little performance. One flourish too strong and you've turned deus into devil. Mistakes? Not allowed. There's no backspace. No eraser. No mercy. If you mess up, you either start over or, you'll love this, try to creatively hide the error with an elaborate doodle. Yes, that marginal drawing of a rabbit dueling a snail? That may just be Brother Thomas covering a misspelled amen. It's cold in the scriptorium. Always. The tiny windows let in just enough light to illuminate your mistakes, never your soul. Your fingers cramp. The quill scratches across the parchment like a dry insect. Occasionally, you get to make your own ink, oak gall, water, and iron filings. Smells faintly like regret. And the parchment. That's no paper. That's animal skin. Real parchment, or if you're feeling luxurious, vellum, the tender belly of a calf turned into a writing surface. Smooth, yes. Ethical, less so. Monks used what they had. And what they had were cows. You work in silence. Mostly. Occasionally, the elder scribe lets out a tisk that echoes like thunder. He inspects your page. He nods slowly. This is the closest you'll get to a compliment. The hours stretch. The script lines blur. You forget what words mean, only that they must be straight, must be clean, must be holy. Historians still debate whether all monks were literate. You recall, grateful you can even read the thing you're copying. Or if some were trained purely as scribes, tools with steady hands, not necessarily understanding minds. You try not to take that personally as your ink blotches again. A tiny devil gets doodled in the corner to cover it up. He looks smug. You name him Harold. Then there's illumination. Not light, but art. If you're skilled or reckless enough to volunteer, you're handed colored pigments and gold leaf. Now you're painting saints in ultramarine blue made from crushed lapis, which costs more than your lifetime of oatmeal rations. One slip, and St. Augustine ends up with a lazy eye forever. Still, it's not all misery. There's something peaceful here. The repetition, the focus, the way your mind narrows to a single line, a single brushstroke, a single amen. The chaos of the world outside, the wars, the plagues, the endless serfdom, none of it penetrates the thick stone walls of the scriptorium. Also, there's no manure to shovel. That's a win. But not everyone gets the scriptorium gig. Some brothers are sent to the garden, or the forge, or, if someone up high is laughing at you, the latrines. You've seen them. Dug deep like trenches in a muddy war. You do not want that job. And yet, the guy who gets it hums as he works. He seems content. Probably because he gets some alone time and fresh air. Even if it smells like 12 centuries of repentance. On Fridays, if the abbot is feeling generous, you might be reassigned for the afternoon. Maybe to the kitchen, where you stir pots of onion stew so thick it stands up on its own. Maybe the herbarium, where another brother lectures you for 40 minutes about the medicinal use of dried thistle root while you fight to stay awake. There's something weirdly democratic about it. All monks work. All monks pray. No one is too good to haul firewood or rinse the laundry in an icy stream. One brother, a tall, silent type named Brother Cuthbert, has been assigned to the beekeeping shed. He emerges every few days covered in stings and serenity. The bees speak God's language, he says, then drifts away like he's made of incense. You're both impressed and vaguely terrified. By sunset, your hands are ink-stained, your back aches, and your stomach is reminding you of that single slice of rye bread you called breakfast. The bell rings for vespers, evening prayers. You wipe your hands, blow gently on the last line of ink, and close the manuscript like it's a sleeping cat. The scriptorium empties. Candles flicker low. Outside, the sky blushes into dusk. And as you shuffle out into the cloister, you realize you copied 6 pages of scripture, invented 2 marginal monsters, and only spilled ink on your robe once. Progress. You've survived another day in the monastery. Just barely. As the bell tolls for Compline, the final prayer of the day, you're grateful, not just because it means sleep is near, but because it marks the sacred full stop at the end of this long, medieval sentence. You gather with the others again in the chapel, now dimly lit, heavy with the scent of candle wax and old incense. There's a softness to everything at this hour. Even the Latin chant seems to breathe slower, as though the words themselves are tired. You murmur prayers for forgiveness, always forgiveness, just in case, and once the last amen echoes into the stones, you make your way back to the dormitory. But don't expect a plush mattress or privacy curtain. Your bed is still that straw-stuffed sack, your blanket a coarse wool sheet that doubles as a skin exfoliant. And your sleeping quarters? Shared with dozens of other monks who snore like overworked oxen. One hums in his sleep. Another whispers the names of saints. It's oddly soothing, if you ignore the draft from the window slits and the constant reminder that the lavatory is 2 cloisters away. You lie down. You shift. You try not to think about the fact that you'll be up again before the moon has even finished crossing the sky. And just when you're beginning to doze, Brother Bernard begins his night coughing again. No one complains. No one tells him to shush. Everyone has their thing. Some mutter, some twitch, some grind their teeth in a medieval harmony of nocturnal quirks. You finally drift off. But your rest isn't always peaceful. Dreams come in strange flavors here. You've started to notice that. Monastic dreams are vivid, sometimes terrifying. Fire, judgment, the face of the abbot turning into a lion. And once, a particularly disturbing episode, you were chased through the cloister by a talking loaf of rye bread. It screamed about fasting. Historians still argue whether these intense dreams were caused by extreme fasting, chronic sleep disruption, or an overactive sense of guilt. Personally, you're voting for all of the above. Morning comes early. Again. You rise to matins. Again. But today is different. Today, you're fasting. Ah yes, fasting. The spiritual cleanse that doubles as an all-day stomach protest. You're allowed water, some herbs in broth if someone's feeling generous, but no solid food. It's a full fast, not the casual skip lunch kind. It's the medieval kind. The kind that makes your knees wobble during prayers and your hands tremble during writing. And yet, it's considered a blessing. A way to purge sin. To draw closer to the divine. To remind yourself that the flesh is weak, and the soul, ideally, is not. You feel very reminded. By mid-morning, your body starts staging a rebellion. Your stomach gurgles like a dying beast. Your head swims as you recite the Psalms. You find yourself staring at Brother Philip's crust of bread with a focus that borders on romantic longing. He hides it. Smart man. It's not just you. The whole monastery feels slower on fasting days. Movements are more deliberate. Eyes droop. Voices drop to soft hums. Even the chickens in the courtyard seem confused. But you press on. Through your chores. Through the prayers. Through the hunger fog. Until eventually, miraculously, the sun begins to dip and Compline returns to save you once more. Back in the chapel, someone nearly collapses during the final hymn. Brother Cuthbert catches him, mutters a blessing, and fans him with a hymn book. No drama. Just another Tuesday. When you return to the dormitory that night, your stomach feels like it's trying to eat your spine. But you also feel lighter. Not just physically. Like you shed something invisible. Anxiety, maybe. Or ego. Or just the memory of lunch. There's a strange satisfaction in it. Not pleasure, exactly, but a quiet sense of control in a world that offers very little. You may not own anything. You may wake up at ungodly hours. But when you fast, you choose to suffer, and that tiny spark of choice feels enormous. You lie down. The wool blanket prickles your skin. A mouse scurries along the far wall, pausing to judge you. You close your eyes. You prepare to rise and do it all again. Because this life, as strange and difficult as it is, begins to wrap around you like the bells themselves, tugging you into rhythm, into silence, into something ancient. And besides, tomorrow's not a fasting day. There's porridge. You wake up to the sound of a sneeze. Not yours. Someone else's, wet, explosive, and profoundly unsettling in the dark. You're not alone, of course. The dormitory houses dozens of monks, and the only thing thinner than the mattresses is the boundary between their respiratory tracts and yours. Welcome to medieval healthcare. You shuffle through matins in a fog. Brother Lucius is coughing. Brother Peter is unusually pale. Brother Anselm, normally a chatterbox during garden duty, hasn't spoken a word since yesterday. You're no physician, but you know what this means. Something is spreading. Still, the rule of Saint Benedict says nothing about sick days. So off you go, to the kitchen this time. You're slicing leeks for stew when you realize your hands are trembling. Is it exhaustion? Hunger? Or did you catch whatever Brother Lucius was broadcasting into the communal air? You know what happens to monks who get really sick? They go to the infirmary. It sounds nice, doesn't it? Infirmary. Gentle. Healing. It's not. The infirmary is a small side hall with only 3 beds and one increasingly frantic Brother Matthew, who doubles as both nurse and hypochondriac. He believes in balance. He also believes in leeches. Lots of leeches. You start coughing during sext. It echoes. A few heads turn. The abbot frowns. Later, Brother Matthew corners you in the cloister with a wet cloth and a bowl of something that smells like fermented onion. You assure him it's just a dry throat. He doesn't believe you. Historians still argue whether medieval monks actually understood the concept of contagion, or simply observed patterns and made spiritual assumptions. Either way, you're now officially suspect. You manage to avoid the infirmary, this time. But others aren't so lucky. By nightfall, Brother Peter is moved there. He doesn't speak. His skin is flushed, and his breath comes in gasps. No one says the word, plague. That would be inviting it. Instead, they pray harder, chant louder, and hang a sprig of dried rosemary over the door, as if that'll keep death out. But here's the bizarre twist. Monks often lived longer than the average medieval peasant. The monastery might be a breeding ground for every germ within a 100-mile radius, but it's also relatively clean, no shared village wells here, and you're not constantly breaking your back in a lord's field. The diet may be bland, but it's consistent. And you bathe regularly. A fact that blows many modern minds. You take your next bath in a wooden tub near the cloister garden, shielded by a modest curtain. The water is cold, drawn from a nearby spring. You scrub with rough soap made from ash and animal fat. It smells like the kitchen floor. Still, it's better than nothing. A bee lands on your toe. You scream. Quietly. The abbot frowns again from across the garden. You are never going to earn his approval. The next few days are tense. 1 monk down. 2 others coughing. Brother Matthew is burning herbs in a brazier and muttering under his breath. You start wondering if this is how entire monasteries vanished during the Black Death, 1 cough at a time. You find yourself praying not just for healing, but for distance. You attend prayers wrapped in extra wool, avoiding eye contact. You eat facing the wall. At night, you sleep on your side, breathing through the blanket. It's not working. And then, just as suddenly as it came, it passes. Brother Peter recovers. He's weak, yes, but upright. Brother Lucius's cough fades. Even Brother Anselm returns to his usual gardening rants about squirrels being agents of the devil. You survived the monastery outbreak. This time, you exhale. For the first time in days, you exhale fully. In celebration, you're given a special task, helping Brother Cuthbert tend to the herb garden. This is both a gift and a test. The herb garden is the monastery's quiet jewel, a square of green tucked into a sunlit corner. Rows of sage, thyme, dill, fennel, and of course, monk's favorite, lavender. Not just for scent. For calming the nerves. And after the week you've had, you need a lavender forest. Cuthbert hands you a spade. He speaks rarely, but when he does, it's with an eerie calm that suggests he knows when you will die, but doesn't want to spoil the surprise. You dig. You water. You collect dried chamomile for tea. There's even a secret stash of garlic, used in almost everything, including a sort of health tonic the monks call for thieves' vinegar. You don't ask who the thieves were. Historians note that many monasteries preserved ancient medical knowledge lost elsewhere in Europe, you recall, though whether they understood why remedies worked is debatable. You just know that lavender tea tastes better than onion broth. The sun warms your back. The garden smells of earth and herbs. You hear bees. The good kind. For the first time since entering the monastery, you feel well, not just not sick, but well. Balanced. Whole. The world outside may be coughing itself into oblivion, but here, surrounded by plants and quiet, you find a small, strange peace. You crush a lavender sprig between your fingers. You breathe it in. You say a silent thanks. And you try very, very hard not to sneeze. Your new assignment doesn't end with the herb garden. Oh no. The abbot, in a moment of either divine insight or exquisite mischief, decides to promote you to the scriptorium. Congratulations! You've graduated from mud and manure to manuscripts and migraines. The scriptorium is the monastery's brain. This is where the most precious work happens, copying texts by hand. Not just the Bible, though that's the main course, but also works by Aristotle, Pliny, Boethius, and the occasional surprise treat like a Roman cookbook or a guide to interpreting dreams via bad digestion. The kind of stuff monks weren't really supposed to enjoy, but definitely did. The room itself is long, narrow, and perpetually cold, even in summer. Thin windows barely admit light, so you work by candle and squinting. Your tools, a quill, a knife to sharpen it, a sheet of parchment, which used to be a sheep, and a pot of ink made from soot and vinegar. It smells faintly like a chimney accident. And your posture? A twisted, slow descent into chronic neck pain. You're assigned to copy the Gospel of Luke. You're excited for about 12 minutes, until you discover that one smudge, one blot, one stray splotch of ink, and the entire page is ruined. Then it's back to scraping the parchment and starting over. You make your first mistake on the third line. Brother Aidan sighs so loudly you feel it in your soul. Still, it's a bizarre kind of joy. You trace letters that haven't changed in centuries, draw little flourishes on capital letters, and, if you're careful, notch in a marginal doodle. Just a small one. A cat wearing a halo. Don't worry, it's symbolic. Historians still argue whether some marginalia, those cheeky drawings in medieval manuscripts, were tolerated creative expression or subversive rebellion. Either way, they're your new therapy. Brother Aidan, your supervisor, is meticulous to the point of madness. He insists on spacing each word with a hair from St. Alban's beard. Metaphorically. Probably. You wouldn't put it past him. He corrects your spelling of Bethlehem, with a tut and a slap of the quill on your wrist. You resist the urge to stab him with it. That would be very unmonk-like. The hours stretch. Your fingers cramp. Your eyes blur. You start hallucinating small saints dancing across the lines of text. But every now and then, you look up. And you realize the scriptorium, for all its dust and discipline, hums with something deeper than silence. The work you do here will outlive you. It might survive war, fire, plague. Some future scholar, centuries from now, might turn your page with awe, and hopefully not notice your spelling mistake in Nazareth. You get a break at midday. It's more lavender tea, of course, and a few crusts of bread. Outside, the sun has chased away the morning chill. You walk the cloister in slow circles, watching swallows loop through the sky. One lands on a gargoyle and chirps triumphantly. Back inside, it's time for illumination. No, not the spiritual kind. The artistic kind. The monastery's most skilled scribes, those blessed with steady hands and questionable sanity, get to paint the manuscript's ornate initials and borders. Gold leaf. Rare pigments. Tiny dragons curling around the margins. Scenes of angels, saints, and, curiously often, rabbits with swords. Today, you're allowed to watch. You stand behind Brother Oswin, who is dabbing a brush no thicker than a strand of hair into powdered lapis lazuli, imported at great expense from Afghanistan, no less. He's coloring Mary's robe with it. She glows. He glances at you. Don't breathe, he whispers. You inhale. Quietly. The pigment shimmers like crushed sapphire. You are terrified to blink. At the end of the day, you're allowed to write a small line at the bottom of the page, scriptum per manus indigni frat res. Written by the unworthy hands of a brother. It's an odd thing, being proud of work you're supposed to feel unworthy of. But that's monastic life in a nutshell. As night falls, your fingers are ink-stained, your back aches, and your candle has burned a perfect wax halo into your desk. But you've preserved something eternal. Or at least copied it very, very carefully. You trudge back to the dormitory, your sandals slapping against the flagstones. Outside, the stars are visible, clean and bright, not yet poisoned by the future's smokestacks and neon. You wonder briefly what this page of Luke will look like in 500 years. And then you trip on a loose stone and nearly eat dirt. So much for posterity. You wake up sore. Not just monk sore, which is the baseline at this point. This is deep sore, the kind that reaches into your bones and hums there. Blame the scriptorium. That charming little crucible of chronic back pain. But today, your assignment shifts. No quills. No ink. You're headed to the monastery's heartbeat. The kitchen. Yes, the kitchen. Where divine austerity meets medieval culinary invention. Or, as you quickly discover, a whole lot of boiling things until they surrender. You walk in just as Brother Gerard is arguing with a turnip. He doesn't trust it. Something about the devil's own root. You decide not to ask. Your first task? Stirring the pottage. Always the pottage. This thick, eternal stew is a kind of medieval miracle. One pot, endless ingredients, and exactly zero seasoning. Every day, something new is added. Yesterday, peas. Today, leeks. Tomorrow, possibly regret. The smell is robust, earthy, a bit like wet rope and hope. Brother Gerard hands you a wooden spoon longer than your arm. Don't let it stick to the bottom, he warns. If it sticks, it burns. If it burns, it blasphemes. Got it. No heretical stew. You stir like your soul depends on it. While the pot bubbles, you chop cabbage. Dice onions. Mash garlic with a stone pestle that still has faint traces of whatever someone else was mashing last week. You're told not to worry about it. Boiling purifies everything, Brother Gerard says. Historians still argue whether monastic kitchens were cleaner than secular ones, or just better at hiding the rats. Either way, you spot one. He winks. You choose peace. Mid-morning, a bell rings. It's not prayer time, it's distribution time. Because the monastery doesn't just cook for itself. Oh no. It also feeds the poor. You're handed a large basket of rye loaves, still warm from the oven. They're dense enough to double as construction material, but in the cold dawn air, they smell like comfort. You join a small procession of monks to the front gate, where a modest line has already formed. Locals, beggars, even travelers hoping for a bit of mercy with their breakfast. You hand a loaf to a barefoot woman clutching a child. She doesn't speak, but the way her hands linger around yours says more than words. This is what charity looks like here. Not grand gestures. Just bread, quietly given. You return to the kitchen humbled and freezing. Lunch is served in the refectory. Everyone eats in silence while one brother reads aloud from a text. Today, something from St. Augustine. You try to listen, but the food is challenging. Boiled beans, turnip mush, and a pudding made from stale barley and water. It tastes like a damp scroll, but you eat it. You always eat it. Complaining isn't allowed. Unless your brother Benedict, who seems to have a permanent scowl and mutters, tastes like sin, under his breath every other bite. You assume he means that as a good thing. After lunch, you help clean. You scrub pots with sand, not soap. You scrape charred bits off the iron cauldrons with what might be an old dagger. You dry dishes using a cloth that has definitely seen better centuries. But there's laughter, too. Quiet, hidden laughter, at Brother Gerard's imitation of the abbot's walk, or when someone accidentally sneezes into the flour sack and creates a medieval mushroom cloud. In the corner, someone hums a hymn. It's out of tune and oddly cheerful. The kitchen is chaos, sure. But it's also alive in a way the scriptorium is not. Less holy, maybe. More human. You end the day scrubbing dried porridge off the walls. No one knows how it got up there. You suspect Brother Benedict. He has a wild look about him. As the bell tolls for vespers, you wipe your hands on your robe and step outside. The air smells of ash and thyme. Somewhere, a cow moos with conviction. You nod respectfully. That night, you dream of the kitchen, of boiling pots and ancient spoons and a soup so thick it traps a saint. You wake up briefly, whisper an apology to Saint Bridget, and go back to sleep. Because tomorrow, you're told, you'll be helping with the brewing. Yes, brewing. And while wine is rare here, monks are nothing if not resourceful. You can smell it before you see it. The tang of yeast, the soft sourness of fermenting mash, and something else. A sharp, peppery edge that could either be hops or a terrible accident waiting to happen. Today, you're in the brewery. The monastery brews its own ale. Not for profit, officially, but for necessity. After all, water isn't always safe. Ale, mildly alcoholic and naturally purified through brewing, is a staple, even for monks sworn to moderation. It's the drink of daily life, the toast of feast days, and, for a lucky few, the secret pride of the monastery. Your mentor today is Brother Aldrich. He's short, wiry, and always smiling like he just got away with something. Which he probably did. He hands you a leather apron and a warning, don't fall in. You laugh. He doesn't. Inside the brewhouse, great wooden vats dominate the room like ancient monsters. You feel tiny. And slightly afraid. Your first task is stirring the mash, malted barley mixed with water, heated in enormous copper cauldrons. It smells earthy, sweet, and a little like wet bread left too long in a warm sock. You lean over too far. Aldrich yanks you back by the apron. I wasn't kidding, he mutters. Once the mash is heated just right, it's time to lauter, separate the liquid wort from the grain. You help pour the golden liquid into a long trough lined with slats and straw. It trickles through lazily, like it knows it's becoming holy hydration. Next comes the hops. Not every monastery uses them, some stick to herbs like grut, but your abbey prides itself on its bitter yet pious flavor profile. Historians still debate whether hops were added for taste, preservation, or to dampen the monks' more enthusiastic tendencies. You recall. Brother Aldrich says, all three. You sprinkle in the hops. The smell deepens, sharpens. Your eyes water slightly. Aldrich sniffs, sighs, and calls it divine nose tickle. Then comes fermentation. The wort is cooled in shallow, open-air pans, then transferred to casks where yeast is added. You watch the mixture bubble and churn, alive in its wooden belly. It's mesmerizing, in a burpy, gurgling way. Aldrich shows you the fermentation cellar, where rows of barrels sit in cool silence, each one labeled in precise Latin script. Some have aged for months. One, he says proudly, has been here since that unfortunate Christmas goose incident. You don't ask. You're invited to sample a sip of the previous week's batch, a light, cloudy ale with notes of clover and blessed restraint. You take a sip. It's not bad. Better than the stew. Probably better than Brother Benedict's sermons. You're allowed another sip. Just one. You feel the warmth in your chest as you walk back to the cloister, and you wonder if Saint Benedict would approve. Then you remember monks brewed stronger stuff for guests, and weaker, small beer for themselves. Moderation. Loopholes. The usual divine dance. Back at the cloister, you help clean bottles for bottling day. It's monotonous, but the rhythm is soothing. Washington rinse. Stack. Brother Aldrich whistles a secular tune, quickly switching to a psalm when Brother Aidan walks past. No one's fooled, but everyone pretends. As the sun sets, Aldrich tells you about the time a batch of ale went rogue, fermented too fast, burst a barrel, and flooded the cellar. We baptized half the rats that year, he says. You laugh. Then realize he might be serious. Before Compline, you're asked to carry a keg to the guest hall. The monastery has visitors, clergy from a neighboring abbey. Diplomacy via drink. You roll the keg carefully, pausing only when it threatens to roll over your foot. You serve a mug to a visiting prior, who nods approvingly and says, tastes like virtue with a hint of defiance. Not bad, considering it came from a room full of burping yeast and near-death accidents. As the evening winds down, you watch from the shadows as the older monks share stories over their cups. Quietly, reverently, but with unmistakable mirth. the kind that only comes from long years and quiet rebellion. Monks were meant to renounce the world, you reflect. But through brewing, they found a way to taste it, carefully, devoutly, and with excellent head retention. You're dismissed just before the abbot appears. He's not against brewing, but let's just say he doesn't appreciate giggling, or whistling, or any joy unrelated to psalmody. That night, you dream you're a yeast cell, bubbling gently, dancing in a vat of light. You wake up mildly hungry and vaguely effervescent. In the morning, Brother Aldrich nods as you pass. You didn't ruin it, he says. High praise indeed. You think you've seen it all, scriptorium discipline, kitchen chaos, and the sweet peril of brewing. But today, your obedience gets a little more outdoorsy. Because the abbot has assigned you to help the beekeeper. Yes, bees. Buzzing, stinging, judgmental little monks in their own right. And in the monastery, they're sacred co-workers. Their wax lights your prayers. Their honey sweetens your gruel. And their collective lifestyle, orderly, productive, self-sacrificing, makes them the patron insects of monastic virtue. You meet Brother Rayner at dawn near the orchard. He's already suited up, thick robe, wide hat, veil over his face. You, however, are handed a cloth hood and told to walk gently and think clean thoughts. You have so many questions. The hives sit in neat wooden rows. Smoke curls from a little burner Brother Rayner carries like a censer at Massachusetts. He puffs it gently toward the hive entrance. Keeps them calm, he says. Like incense for bees. You nod, suppressing your urge to run. He lifts a hive lid. The interior hums like a living heartbeat. Thousands of bees crawl over honeycomb, golden and glistening, thick with stored sunlight. You stare in awe, right before one bee lands on your eyebrow and performs what you assume is a tiny exorcism. You don't flinch. Much. Brother Rayner smiles. They can smell fear, you know. You believe him. Your job today is to help harvest honey. Carefully. Reverently. With less screaming than you expected. You hold the wooden frames while he scrapes off the wax caps, revealing golden liquid within. You carry them, trembling slightly, to the spinning drum used to extract the honey. It sloshes in slow amber spirals, glinting like molten halos. Historians still argue whether medieval monks kept bees primarily for spiritual reasons, medicinal use, or simply for sweetness, you recall, while eyeing a bee perched on your thumb. Probably all three. Brother Rayner explains how wax is collected to make candles for the chapel. Those tall, solemn tapers that light evening prayers? Born from the busy, bumbling labor of insects. Divine glow from insect toil. Back at the work table, you smear a bit of honey on a piece of rye bread. It's the best thing you've tasted in months. Maybe years. Sticky. Floral. Alive. You're allowed a second piece. Mercy. Then it's time to tend the hives. You help swap out an old comb frame for a new one, brushing bees aside with a feather so gentle it feels like heresy. One bee stings Brother Rayner on the knuckle. He doesn't flinch. My penance, he murmurs and moves on. You ask if bees ever swarm. He nods solemnly. Sometimes they abandon their hive. Too much noise. Too much heat. Or if they sense something wrong with the queen. You file that away. Monastic parallels, anyone? In the afternoon, you carry jars of honey to the apothecary, where Brother Isidore uses it to make soothing syrups for sore throats and minor burns. He adds lavender and mint. The mixture smells like a saint's whisper. Sweetness is rare here, he tells you, handing you a jar to label. But it reminds us the world was made to be good. Even after the fall. That night, after Compline, you sneak out, just a little. You sit by the edge of the orchard and watch the hives in the moonlight. The bees are quiet now, folded into their waxy city, dreaming of flowers. You think about their world, tiny, ordered, full of hidden labor and occasional sting. You wonder if this is what sainthood feels like. Not grand miracles, but patient buzzing in the background of the world. Then you get bit by a mosquito and the moment ends. Still, you walk back to your cell with the taste of honey on your tongue. You've learned something today. Even in a place built on silence and sacrifice, there's still room for sweetness. You fall asleep smiling. Today begins with a surprise. You're not waking to the bell, but to the deep, reverberating clang of the church tower. It's louder than usual, urgent, insistent. Something's off. You pull on your robe and rush out barefoot, heart thudding like a novice's first confession. Turns out, you're not under attack. No Viking raiders. No heretics at the gate. Just a funeral. Brother Lucian, the oldest monk in the monastery, passed away in the night. Quietly, they say. Peacefully, curled beneath his woolen blanket, hands folded as if still in prayer. He'd been here longer than anyone could remember. And now, like all things in this place, he must be honored. Slowly, solemnly, and according to a ritual older than most of the walls surrounding you. You're assigned to assist in the funeral preparations. Not glamorous, but sacred nonetheless. First comes the washing. You and 2 others clean Brother Lucian's body in warm water infused with herbs, rosemary, sage, a pinch of mint. He smells like memory and old books. You handle him gently. He's lighter than you expected. The kind of lightness that only comes when someone's truly let go. Then comes the robe, fresh, simple, unadorned. A rope cincture tied loosely around the waist. He is laid on a wooden plank beside the chapel, where brothers file in to offer prayers. You join the vigil. It's long, quiet, hypnotic. Psalms flow like water, unbroken and low. Someone coughs. Another monk weeps softly into his sleeve. No one says a word. Historians still argue whether monastic funerals followed rigid scriptural templates or evolved from older, local customs. Today, you realize it's probably both. Because this feels ancient, instinctive, holy. After prime, the funeral mass begins. You carry one of the long candles. Beeswax, of course. The flame dances as the choir chants the Dies Irae. You're not supposed to sing, but your lips move anyway. The Latin syllables feel heavy and golden in your mouth. Brother Lucian is laid in a simple grave behind the abbey, among rows of identical crosses. The soil is soft from last night's rain. The scent of turned earth mixes with incense. As the final prayers are said, a blackbird sings from the tower ledge. It's wildly off-key. Brother Aldrich says, Lucian would have liked that. You believe him. After the burial, there's a shared meal in the refectory. Still in silence, but this time with a quiet intensity. Everyone eats slower. No scowls from Brother Benedict. Even he seems wrapped in thought. There's an odd kind of joy floating through the hall. Because death, here, isn't scandalous. It's expected, prepared for, even welcomed, eventually. You're reminded that monks consider life a long walk toward home. Lucian, they say, simply arrived first. In the afternoon, you help transcribe his favorite psalm, Psalm 84, onto a fresh piece of parchment, to be tucked into the chapel's lectionary. The words feel more alive now. Even the sparrow finds a home. You wonder if Lucian has one too. Evening prayers come quickly. The choir sounds thinner with one voice missing, but no less fervent. The chapel feels larger tonight, somehow. That night, as you lie on your straw mattress, staring at the cracked ceiling, you think about your own death. Not in a morbid way. Just curiously. Would the brothers chant for you? Would the blackbirds sing again? You fall asleep wondering what dreams come to those who no longer need to wake. And in the corner of your cell, you swear you hear the gentle creak of an old man's laugh. You wake to the sound of distant hammering. Not bells, not chanting, hammering. Rhythmic, sharp, unapologetically worldly. You're not in the cloister anymore, friend. Today, you've been volunteered for the construction crew. Your monastery is expanding. A new wing, possibly a library, maybe just more cells for novices like you. No one's quite sure. The abbot mumbled something about divine logistics and waved the blueprints like they were holy relics. And now, You're holding a pickaxe you barely know how to lift. Brother Anselm is in charge. He's enormous, like someone accidentally blessed a pile of bricks and it came to life. He gestures at a pile of stone blocks and says, "Start moving." So you do. It's back-breaking work. You sweat through your robe within the hour. Your palms develop instant blisters. Your shoes fill with dust and judgment. And yet, strangely, it's satisfying. The stones are stubborn, but not cruel. The tools complain, but they obey. It feels good to struggle against something that isn't metaphysical for once. Monasteries weren't just spiritual powerhouses, they were also architectural marvels. Entire generations of monks worked on these structures, some knowing they'd never live to see the finished result. Historians still argue whether these long-term projects symbolized piety, power, or a very well-disguised need for better plumbing. During a brief break, you sit under a fig tree and listen to Anselm explain the foundation stones. Each is placed with care, following sacred geometry, measurements believed to echo divine proportion. The cornerstones are blessed with holy water. One even contains a relic, a splinter of a saint's rib. You're not sure how they verified that. Later, you're handed a chisel and shown how to carve basic shapes. You're terrible at it. Your circle looks like a depressed onion. Brother Anselm pats your shoulder. Could be worse. Could be abstract. By midday, you've helped raise part of a wall. It's barely knee-high, but yours all the same. You scratch a tiny mark onto the inner side, your initial, disguised in a decorative flourish. No one will ever see it. But still, it's there. You're now part of the monastery in a literal, physical sense. Lunch is bread, cheese, and a lukewarm ale served from a chipped clay mug. It tastes divine after a morning of stone hauling. Brother Anselm says, when we work with our hands, we remember we were made from dust. Then he lets out a truly unholy burp and goes back to lifting rocks. Construction continues all afternoon. You discover that monks have their own architectural slang. Holy corner means the sacred angle facing the altar, while sinner's edge is where all the warped bricks end up. You accidentally mix up a bucket of mortar using vinegar instead of water. Anselm stares at it, tastes it, shrugs, and uses it anyway. You wonder if divine architecture is just a series of happy accidents blessed after the fact. Near sunset, you help hoist a timber beam into place. It takes 6 monks, 1 rope pulley system, and the collective silence of people who know that one wrong move means martyrdom by gravity. The beam groans, settles, and locks in. It's oddly exhilarating. You're told that some monks devoted their entire lives to building a single column or painting a single ceiling. That humility, knowing you're contributing to something that might never bear your name, feels heavier than any stone you've lifted all day. But also holier. As Compline approaches, you wash the grit from your face and flex your sore arms. Your body aches in new places. Your robe smells like sweat and limestone. Your soul, a little more grounded. Brother Anselm finds you before prayers. Hands you a chipped piece of stone from today's work. Keep it, he says. Proof that you made something. You slip it into your satchel, next to your psalter and that weird piece of honeycomb from last week. Back in your cell, you rub the edge of the stone as you fall asleep. It's rough, solid, real. You helped build a monastery today. And tomorrow, when you walk past that wall, you'll know, you didn't just live in this place. You shaped it. You wake with your arms still aching from yesterday's stone hauling. Every muscle feels like it's been personally interrogated by the Inquisition. Even your fingernails hurt. You groan softly into your pillow of straw, but there's no time to wallow. Today is market day. No, you're not going shopping for trinkets or cinnamon sticks, though you wish. You're accompanying Brother Hugo into the nearby village to collect donations, trade herbs, and maybe exchange a few jars of honey for parchment and ink. This is a big deal. Monks don't leave the monastery often. Stepping beyond its stone walls feels scandalous. You tug your hood low and try not to look too curious as the outer gate creaks open. The world beyond seems brighter, louder, faster. Brother Hugo walks with the calm of a man who's seen too many chickens and not enough miracles. He leads you through muddy roads, past startled pigs and gossiping villagers. Children stare at your robes like you're either a saint or a strange wizard. You wave. One throws a turnip. Historians still argue whether monks were welcomed in villages as spiritual guides or resented as taxmen in robes. You recall as you dodge another vegetable. At the market square, chaos reigns. Carts creak. Traders shout. A goose escapes and declares war on a basket of apples. You cling to Brother Hugo like a barnacle to a holy relic. Your task is simple. Keep inventory. You carry a small wax tablet and stylus, and every time Hugo trades something, honey, herbs, blessed salt, you jot it down like a tiny, anxious accountant. You're surprisingly good at it. Possibly because you're terrified of getting anything wrong. At one point, Hugo offers a tiny vial of oil of hyssop to a leather-faced merchant. In return, the man forks over a roll of fine linen. For the altar cloth, Hugo explains. You can't stop staring at the merchant's necklace, a dried mouse skull on a string. Supposedly for luck. Brother Hugo doesn't comment. You learn that silence can be the most judgmental form of prayer. Midday arrives, and you're offered bread baked with caraway seeds and a thin stew that tastes like regret. You eat politely, and try not to think about the monastery's radishes. At least they don't whisper back. In the afternoon, you're pulled aside by a village woman with a child in her arms. "Please, brother," she says. "A blessing." Brother Hugo nods at you. "Wait, you." You fumble your words but lay your hand on the child's brow. Whisper a psalm you half remember. The mother weeps. The child sneezes. You think it counts. It hits you then. Out here, the monastery isn't just a building. It's an idea. A symbol. A place of healing, safety, hope, even if most villagers have never seen inside its walls. You're part of that now. As you and Hugo pack up to return, a wiry man in a patchy cloak sidles up and asks if you'll trade a relic for his last chicken. Hugo sighs. "We don't deal in chickens." You walk back in silence, the monastery appearing like a dream through the trees. Home. Safe. Predictable. Before entering, Brother Hugo turns to you. You did well. Didn't faint, didn't swear, didn't sell anyone a fake toenail of Saint Cuthbert. You beam. Possibly the highest praise you'll ever receive. That night, you record the day's transactions in the monastery ledger. You scratch the final line with a flourish. 2 jars honey equals 6 quills plus 1 blessed linen. Then, in tiny letters, and a sneezy child, saved from sorrow. You blow out your candle and lie in the dark, exhausted. The world outside is noisy, complicated, and full of very bold geese. But you'll carry a piece of it in your prayers now. You wake to a different kind of silence. Not the peaceful kind that comes before lauds, nor the empty quiet of a sleeping cloister, but the heavy, uncomfortable hush of inspection day. Once a year, the bishop's envoy arrives. The monastery holds its collective breath. Today is that day. You hurry into your robe, barely remembering to tighten your rope belt. Outside, the brothers move with nervous precision, sweeping corridors, adjusting tapestries, scrubbing everything short of actual sinners. Even the goats in the garden seem unusually well behaved. Brother Matthew mutters, "Try not to blink too loud." Sage advice. The visitor arrives before terse. A tall man in a spotless green robe, sign of his ecclesiastical status, with a nose that seems genetically engineered to sniff out theological impropriety. He's accompanied by a scribe with ink-stained fingers and a permanent sneer. Both men look like they consider smiling a sin. Historians still argue whether these visitations were about genuine oversight or more about political theater. You're now leaning toward the second option. The abbot greets them with the fakest warm tone you've ever heard, gesturing toward the freshly scrubbed cloister like a magician revealing a disappearing act. You're ordered to assist in showing the guests around. Apparently, someone thinks your face looks honest. You do your best to look like someone who's never once fallen asleep during prayers or stolen a second piece of bread. First stop, the scriptorium. The bishop's envoy squints at your illuminated texts, nodding slowly. When he sees the initial Q you drew last week, complete with a frog riding a fish, he pauses. The scribe scribbles furiously. Artistic liberties, the envoy mutters. You break into a cold sweat. Next, the refectory. The brothers sit with military posture, chewing as if the food might explode. Even Brother Aldrich, who normally eats like a catapult, nibbles with delicate restraint. The envoy observes the meal in silence. The scribe samples the cheese. Sneezes. Writes something. You suspect it's not a compliment. Then comes the dormitory. Beds perfectly aligned. Blankets so neatly folded they may be cursed. You've hidden the broken comb and the unauthorized beeswax candle you made last week. Probably wise. You pass the infirmary, and the envoy actually softens a little. He speaks gently to Brother Luke, who's been battling a persistent cough since Lent. You're doing good work here, he says. Wait, was that warmth? Even the scribe stops writing for a moment. Afternoon brings the questioning. Monks are called in, one at a time, to be interviewed. You sit on a small stool while the envoy peers at you over the top of his notes. How is the abbot's leadership? You blink. He leads. You say diplomatically. Are you personally satisfied with your spiritual duties? You nod so hard your hood slips down over your eyes. The envoy raises a brow. And the rule of Saint Benedict, do you follow it without deviation? You try to recall whether accidentally feeding garlic to the monastery cat counts as a deviation. You mumble something about ora et labora and hope for the best. To your relief, he doesn't press. Just jots a note and dismisses you. Evening falls, and with it, the last stage of the visit, the inventory. Scrolls are counted. Relics examined. Candles measured. The bishop's men even weigh the wine barrels. Apparently, miracles can be audited. You overhear the envoy whispering with the abbot about a missing volume from the Psalter collection. The abbot blames mildew. You suspect Brother Bruno used it as kindling during last winter's frost. Still, no one gets yelled at. No one is excommunicated. In fact, just before Vespers, the envoy nods and says, "The monastery is in good order." It's like someone lifts a 100-pound stone from your back. The abbot leads a special evening prayer. The relief is palpable. Someone even laughs during the final hymn, though they pretend it was a cough. Later, in the candlelight of your cell, you replay the day's absurdities, the staged smiles, the frog drawing scandal, the cheese-induced sneeze, but also the tiny moment in the infirmary. The gentleness, the human connection. It reminds you that even in all the pageantry and ritual, there's still something real beneath it all. You fall asleep knowing the monastery will live to chant another day. And next year, maybe you'll draw a fish without the frog. You wake before the bell, which never happens. Something's wrong. It's the smell, acrid, smoky, panicked. You throw on your robe and rush to the cloister. The air is hazy, like someone lit incense with a grudge. A monk runs past, holding a sloshing bucket. Fire in the storage room. Great. Just what your sore muscles needed. You sprint behind him, heart hammering. Smoke curls from the east wing, where the winter stores are kept. Root vegetables, dried herbs, sacks of oats, and crucially, the last of the honey. Monastic fires were terrifying. No fire brigades, no fire hydrants, just frantic brothers with buckets, cloths, and whispered Hail Marys. Historians still argue whether most monastery fires were caused by lightning, candle accidents, or careless scribes falling asleep mid-illumination. You now suspect all three happened regularly. You join the chaos. Water lines form, buckets passed hand to hand. You take your place, legs braced, passing heavy clay jugs until your arms tremble. You've never seen Brother Jerome move so fast, or speak in Latin that spicy. The abbot is barking orders. Someone's trying to save the herbal scrolls. You spot Brother Hugo shoving bags of lentils out the door like they're possessed. Then, just as quickly as it started, it's over. The fire is doused. Smoke still clings to the walls, but the flames have been tamed. The room is scorched, a few sacks singed, but no lives lost. The honey didn't make it. A tragic day. Later, when things calm down, you help clean the wreckage. You scrape soot from shelves and salvage half-charred prayer books. A rat scurries past, looking annoyed that its midnight plans were ruined. Despite the loss, the brothers are in oddly good spirits. Fires bring fear, yes, but also focus. You've all faced something together. There's strange comfort in that. Someone finds a single unburnt apple and divides it among the helpers. You get a slice the size of a coin. It tastes like relief. In the following days, repairs begin. You help scrub walls, stack new firewood, and replace a few half-melted icons. Brother Anselm carves a wooden plaque that reads, "Holy smoke is still smoke." It's nailed to the doorway as both a joke and a warning. You learn that some monasteries kept large stone tubs filled with water, early fire suppression tools. Yours doesn't. You make a mental note to petition for 1 or 10. Still, you're impressed. Even without modern tech, the monastery didn't fall. The brothers worked like a single, clumsy, devoted organism, bounding into action with sandals flapping and habits flying. You also notice something quiet after the fire. Not just the ash-stained stones, but in the prayers, in the chanting, in the walks between lauds and vespers, something softer, something more present. The monastery feels less like an institution, more like a family that's been through something traumatic and come out holding hands. Historians still argue whether fire rituals in medieval monasteries carried spiritual symbolism, or were just the universe's way of saying, "Clean your storeroom." But you know this one wasn't symbolic. It was just real, hard, sooty, and holy, somehow. A week later, the abbot calls for a day of thanksgiving. There's extra soup at supper. A hymn of gratitude during Compline. Brother Bruno plays the dulcimer with actual joy. You fall asleep that night breathing air that still faintly smells of ash. But it no longer alarms you. Instead, it reminds you, even in a world built of prayers and parchment, some lessons are learned with buckets and blistered hands. And maybe, just maybe, that's what faith really is. You awaken to the sound of bees. Not metaphorical ones, the actual, buzzing, mildly threatening kind. They've taken up residence just outside the infirmary, nesting in the crook of an old wooden beam. And today, as fate would have it, you're assigned to assist Brother Hugo in caring for the monastery's beehives. You're flattered for all of 6 seconds. Until the first sting. Monasteries in the Middle Ages kept bees for many reasons. Honey was precious, not just as a rare sweetener, but also for making mead and preserving fruits. Beeswax was gold in candle form. And the bees themselves, well, they were considered sacred, a kind of humming miracle. Historians still argue whether medieval monks genuinely believed bees were divine messengers, or if that was just an excuse to avoid exterminating them when they swarmed the altar. Either way, today, you are the bee's humble servant. Brother Hugo hands you a smoky censer and a tattered veil that does almost nothing. "They can sense fear," he says solemnly, "as if you're about to duel a bear." The hives are tucked behind the chapel, in a small sunny garden filled with lavender, mint, and rosemary. The scent is heavenly. The bees, less so. One circles your face with the persistence of a tax collector. You puff smoke gently into the hive, and Hugo begins lifting frames. The wax glows golden in the sunlight, shimmering with honey and wriggling life. You try not to flinch as a bee lands squarely on your nose, possibly judging your posture. Brother Hugo hums softly as he works. He speaks to the bees in Latin. You're not sure if it's for their benefit or his. He explains that some monasteries told the bees about important events, deaths, births, changes in leadership. It was believed they needed to be kept informed or they'd leave. So naturally, you whisper to them. "Hello, yes, Brother Hugo's still alive. No major deaths. We had a small fire, but everything's fine. Please don't swarm me. The bees seem satisfied. Later, you help spin the frames in a crude centrifuge. The honey drips into ceramic jars, thick, rich, and smelling faintly of rosemary. You dip a finger in. It's like sunlight in syrup form. Brother Hugo catches you, then does the same. He winks. Divine indulgence. Back in the kitchen, the honey is portioned. Some for eating, some for medicine, some for trade. A few drops are set aside for Brother Luke's stubborn cough. Your bee duties continue for several weeks. You learn which flowers attract calmer bees. You start humming to them like Hugo does. You even begin to notice differences between hives, some more aggressive, some more relaxed, like hairy-winged personalities. And there's a moment, just a moment, when a bee lands on your wrist and stays, not stinging, not flying away. Just resting. Its tiny legs tickle your skin. You hold your breath. And then it lifts off again, like a blessing. You wonder if this is why monks worked with bees, not for honey, but for humility. After all, here you are, a man in robes and sandals, trying to find God in chants and ink, being schooled by a striped insect the size of your fingernail. One afternoon, a storm rolls in suddenly. High winds, torrential rain. You and Hugo rush to cover the hives with oilcloth and stones. As the sky roars overhead, you huddle beneath the eaves, soaked and laughing. Rain pours off the roof like a waterfall. Brother Hugo says, "They'll be all right. Bees know how to wait." That night, after the storm, you write a small poem in the margins of your prayer book. Just a few lines. It mentions bees and storms and the gentle hum of unseen things. You don't read it to anyone. But when you pass the hives the next morning and hear the buzz, calm, steady, alive, you feel like they've read it anyway. It begins with a cough. At first, it's just Brother Luke, again, whose lungs have always sounded like a haunted bellows. Then Brother Anselm. Then 2 novices. By the end of the week, 6 monks are coughing, sneezing, and slumping through prayers like wilted cabbages. Sickness has come to the monastery. You're not surprised. The Middle Ages weren't exactly known for their germ theory. The monastery tries its best, lavender strewn on floors, vinegar for cleaning, plenty of fresh air, but with everyone sleeping in the same dormitory and sharing spoons like it's a bonding exercise, illness spreads faster than gossip during Lent. Historians still argue whether monastic health practices genuinely helped prevent disease or were more about piety than practicality. You're now firmly in the not very helpful camp. The abbot declares the infirmary to be in emergency mode. You're reassigned from beekeeping to bedside duty. Brother Hugo pats your shoulder with a sympathy that says, "Good luck, kid." The infirmary smells of rosemary and resignation. Beds are lined with extra straw. Herbs hang from rafters. Brother Luke moans theatrically every time someone walks by. Brother Anselm has lost his voice entirely and communicates in aggressive pointing. You fetch water. You fluff pillows. You learn how to make a disgusting but supposedly healing paste from garlic, honey, and wine. It smells like a cursed salad dressing. The monks grimace, but they swallow it. Mostly. One afternoon, a particularly feverish novice mistakes you for Saint Peter. You don't correct him, though you do gently remind him not to kiss your sandal. Not everyone is dramatic. Brother Matthew bears his fever like a knight in a dying duel. He still tries to recite psalms through the coughing. You sit by him at night, reading aloud from the Gospels in soft, slow tones. He says thank you with his eyes. Miraculously, no one dies. The fevers break, slowly but surely. You suspect it's less divine intervention and more the effect of broth, bed rest, and Brother Hugo's questionable poultices. Still, it's a reminder. Your life is held together by prayers and luck, by the sturdy walls of the monastery and the fragile sinews of the human body. During a rare break, you wander out to the cloister and sit beneath the elm. The birds are louder than usual. Or maybe the quiet has grown more profound in contrast. You reflect on how easily life tilts. One cough, one storm, one spark, and everything changes. There's a ritual held once all the brothers are back on their feet, a mass of gratitude. Everyone shows up, pale but upright. Brother Luke brings his cough anyway, like a personal instrument. The abbot reads from the Psalms about deliverance from pestilence. Everyone nods solemnly. Then, as the final hymn begins, Brother Anselm suddenly regains his voice and lets out a wheeze so off-key it might be a miracle or a medical concern. You and Brother Bruno lock eyes and try not to laugh. Laughter, like fever, is contagious. That night, you write another poem. This one's about bodies and broth and the strange nobility of wiping another man's nose. You tuck it into the back of your psalter. Weeks later, the coughs are just echoes. The beds are clean again. The infirmary smells less like garlic and more like linen. Life resumes. But you're not quite the same. You've touched hot foreheads. You've prayed for men you usually avoid during chores. You've held a cracked cup of broth to lips that whispered ancient verses between gulps. And in doing so, you've realized, monastic life isn't just about solitude and silence. It's about service. Even the messy kind. Especially the messy kind. The parchment trembles slightly as you scrape it. Not from nerves. Well, maybe a little, but from the sheer care this work demands. You're in the scriptorium now. Yes, that scriptorium. The silent, ink-scented sanctum where pages become prayer. You didn't ask to be here. Brother Felix sprained his wrist churning butter in what is now known as the incident. So, naturally, you, who once spilled ink on your own psalter, are now trusted with illuminated text. No pressure. The scriptorium is its own world. Cold, hushed, lit by slanted morning sun and flickering tallow candles. Quills scratch like the sound of beetles under bark. The air smells of parchment, dust, and faintly of regret. Historians still argue whether most monastic scribes genuinely enjoyed the work or were just the quietest men available. You now suspect the latter. You're assigned to copying the Rule of Saint Benedict, a classic. Tons of rules. Tons of tiny letters. Your Latin is serviceable, your handwriting passable, your posture deeply regrettable. Brother Martin, the head scribe, shows you how to cut the quill just so. The tip must be chiseled, not too fine, or it'll snag. Your first letter, B, ends up looking like a collapsed tower. Martin doesn't scold you, exactly. He just sighs like someone who's seen too many bad BS in his life. Still, you improve. You learn the rhythm. Dip, scrape, breathe. You learn to blot before the ink bleeds. You learn that illumination, those glorious golds and deep blues, requires not just skill, but patience bordering on sainthood. You're not trusted with gold leaf yet, but you are allowed to draw marginalia. Tiny drawings tucked into the corners. Traditionally, saints, angels, beasts. You draw a suspiciously B-shaped dragon. No one notices. There's a strange joy in this repetition. Hours pass. Your world becomes a river of words. Your fingers cramp. Your neck knots. But your mind floats. The monks rarely speak here, but glances say plenty. A nod of respect from Brother Luke when your lines straighten. A raised brow from Martin when you ink a particularly clean Q. There's even camaraderie in failure. One scribe sneezes and ruins a page. He curses under his breath, and someone slips him a honey drop in silent sympathy. Your favorite part. The prayers before and after. Each day begins and ends with a blessing over the work. You like the idea that words matter, not just what they say, but how they're shaped, offered, preserved. That making books is a sacred act. One afternoon, you're given a break. You step outside, blinking at the sun. Your hands are speckled with ink. Your knees crack. But your heart, it's oddly full. You pass the beehives, nodding to the girls. You pass the cloister garden, where Brother Hugo is arguing with a pigeon again. You pass the kitchen, where someone is definitely burning lentils. And for a moment, you feel it, the thread connecting all these things. The bees, the chants, the soot, the sleepless nights, the letters you draw by candlelight. It's not glamorous. It's not even particularly clean. But it's yours. You return to your desk and begin a new page. The bell tolls in the early morning fog. Not the usual bell, the soft, steady call for lauds, but a deeper, slower knell. One long note after another. You know its meaning before anyone says a word. Someone has died. The monastery, for all its routine and sacred quiet, is still a place where life ends. Brother Matthew. The fever had passed weeks ago, but not cleanly. He never fully recovered, his breath shallow, his steps slowing day by day like a candle flickering low. You remember sitting by his bedside, reading psalms while he stared at the ceiling with a faint smile, as though he were already seeing something you could not. Historians still argue whether monks truly feared death less than others, or whether they just became better at disguising it. Watching the brothers move in solemn silence, preparing the funeral rites, you're inclined to believe it's both. You're assigned to help clean his chamber. It's simple: one rough cot, a tiny cross, a prayer rope worn smooth with use. Tucked beneath his blanket, you find a small scrap of parchment. A poem, perhaps. You don't read it. Instead, you fold it gently and place it with his psalter. The burial takes place behind the chapel, where morning frost still clings to the grass. The whole monastery turns out, robes dusted with dew, faces solemn. Brother Luke coughs, quietly this time. Brother Hugo clutches his candle so tightly it drips onto his wrist. He doesn't seem to notice. The abbot speaks a few words, measured, beautiful, tired. He recites, in Paradisum dejecant te angeli, may the angels lead you into paradise. And just like that, the earth receives another soul. You stay behind after the others return to the chapel. The grave is simple. No headstone, just a wooden cross and the soft scent of turned soil. You press your palm to the dirt. Say nothing. Listen to the silence. Life returns to routine within hours. That's the monastic way. Chores don't pause for grief. Bees still need tending. Psalms still need chanting. Brother Felix has recovered and immediately hurts himself again. This time, somehow, with a ladle. The cycle spins on. But well, something shifts. You find yourself lingering longer at prayers. Speaking a little softer to the bees. You write fewer jokes in the margins of manuscripts and more verses about light and time and wind. You start to understand that being a monk isn't about escape. It's not about rising above the world like a floating saint. It's about sinking into it, into its aches, its beauty, its repetition, its absurdity. You wash another monk's feet and realize, this is holiness. You scrub floors and sing badly and help lift a heavy barrel of pickled onions, and somehow, this, too, becomes sacred. The life of a monk is strange, bizarre, even. Waking at 2 a.m. to chant in a cold chapel, debating how many angels can dance on the head of a pin, praying for the soul of a bee, writing until your fingers go numb. But here, wrapped in stone and silence and the breath of other men searching for meaning, you finally feel found. You are not holy, but you are trying. And in the Middle Ages, in this little monastery on a wind-lashed hill, trying is enough. So now, let the world grow quiet again. The bees have returned to their hives. The ink has dried on the last letter. The candles have burned low, pools of gold on ancient stone. You, the weary monk of our tale, have laid down your quill. You've folded your robe. You've knelt one last time in the cold, and felt the stillness settle over your shoulders like a blanket. You've lived 1,000 small days in this one life, chanting psalms through the dark, harvesting honey beneath the sun, losing friends to fevers, and finding peace in parchment. Each day like a prayer whispered not into heaven, but into the cracks of the earth itself. And now, it's night again. Not the kind of night filled with dread or noise, but the kind that hums with ancient comfort. The kind monks once walked through barefoot, whispering to stars they believed were angels in disguise. Let your breath slow. Let the cloister gates close behind you. Let the soft hush of woolen robes brushing stone echo once, then fade. The world outside is still spinning, louder, faster, brighter. But here, in this final hush, you remember the rhythm of something older. Something quieter. You're not a scribe anymore. Not a beekeeper. Not even a monk. You are simply still. Good night, dear traveler of parchment and psalm. May your rest be deep, your dreams gentle, and your spirit sweetened like honey in the hollow of an old, carved comb. Sleep well.